This episode is brought to you by Farmers Insurance.
Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is still best of friends with America, despite a number of Israeli officials suggesting Washington involvement in the nationwide protests that have swept the country over proposed judicial reforms. Also ahead on the program, a big meeting in Moscow today as Iran and Russia talk U.S. sanctions, the Ukrainian conflict, and a comprehensive strategic partnership between the two nations. We'll break all that down. And the Prime Minister of Poland takes aim at the European Union for failing to deliver on the key points of the Western-backed Ukrainian grain deal, resulting in European farmers struggling to survive as oversupply forces local prices to tank. From Moscow to the world.
We offer a variety of no-contract plans, and our U.S.-based customer service team can help find one that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Some things just make you feel more alive than others. Like the rush of adrenaline from an SUV that roars from 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Jaguar delivers that thrill every day. The F-Pace, how Jaguar makes an SUV.
Will Turkey ratify Sweden's NATO membership? Stockholm says it can't fulfill all Ankara's demands. As the bloc's membership requires unanimous approval, what would make Turkey change its mind? And what does all of this mean for NATO's future? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. One of the many fallouts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been that previously neutral Nordic countries.
Now that's volume at 14. Let's get some volume.
So setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low. The first thing I'm noticing is you still have that very nice high seating position, just like the old LX. You know, great visibility though, with the nice boxy windows, so very easy to see around. And also now for the rear view mirror, you have a camera rear view mirror here, which is great to have. So extra visibility if you do happen to have someone sitting in those back seats. Other things here to note about it. So you have a pretty nice and responsive engine here. It's got rid of the V8. Now it has a twin turbo V6. It's a 3.4 liter twin turbo V6, and it's pretty immediate. It's hooked up to a 10-speed automatic. It's really smooth and polished, very responsive, no complaints so far. Brakes also have a nice and immediate feel to them. You have to barely just lean on them a little bit and they start biting nice and early. Feel very confidence inspiring. And this vehicle just, it feels pretty big, but since it hasn't grown by much, it feels very similar to the current LX as far as the driving position and all that. The ride is also very smooth, of course. Even though this is body on frame, you have an adaptive suspension. It can change the height of the suspension as well as the hydraulic lift with the way it goes up and down. And you also have various drive modes, so you can go down to comfort mode. I'm just in the normal mode currently, but there's comfort mode, which will soften things up even more. There's also a sport and a sport plus mode, which will make things a little bit sportier, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Let's turn down onto this back road here, see how it does. It's lowering the suspension as well to give us the best performance, and it's lowered, and here we go. Okay, not as responsive as I was expecting out of a sport plus mode, but pulls really nicely once it gets the idea. So it's has a good amount of power here. So it's 409 horsepower and then 479 pound-feet of torque, which is 26 more horsepower and 76 more pound-feet of torque than the old V8. But I have to say, this is not as responsive as the old V8. I don't know if it's this 10-speed automatic or what. I guess I spoke too soon about the transmission, because I had my foot to the floor for like at least 2 to 3 seconds before I finally figured out what I wanted to do. So, but you know, once it does start pulling, it pulls very strongly. It's a strong motor as well. In addition to hauling this nearly 6,000-pound SUV up to a 0 to 60 time of 6.1 seconds, which is a full second faster than the old LX with the V8. So, I don't know how they're getting those test numbers, because I feel like I wasted about 2 solid seconds just standing on the gas pedal before I even did anything. But anyway, yeah, it's supposedly punchier. Now the torque does come on sooner, about 1,600 RPM sooner for full torque compared to the V8. So even though the V8 might feel a little more responsive, not having to wait for turbos, the torque does in fact for full torque come on faster here with the smaller turbo engine. And this road run currently usually generates a lot of road noise, and I mean, it's just a dull hum, and that's really it as far as this road goes. It's still very nice and polished. And also the 10-speed automatic, if you want, it does have a manual mode, and you have paddle shifters here. I think it's kind of silly, honestly, for a vehicle like this. But if you do want to, if you're doing off-roading or something, you want to put it into a manual gear, and have it hold a specific gear, you can certainly do that as well. But we're coming up some corners here that I always take, and let's see how this thing handles. So this one, having the largest wheels, the 22s, should make it handle, the best, I would assume. And, there's some lean here. It certainly is nautical in its handling, I would say, but it's not bad. I will say this does feel a little bit better than the previous generation by a little bit, but the previous generation I did test was an F Sport version. This is not the F Sport. I think that really makes a big difference. While the tires were even chirping there, and I was not going that quickly around that corner. So yeah, I mean, this thing weighs 5,901 pounds, but it is actually lighter. They said that they dropped about 250 pounds over the old LX, and I guess that makes sense. But this thing just, I don't know. To me, it honestly feels heavier. Again, could be the tuning. The F Sport version will have some stiffer adaptive dampers, and that also does have a rear sway bar that this does not have. So you don't get a rear sway bar unless you get the F Sport version. So that's definitely the one to get if you want, some slightly better handling than what this offers here. But I'm not going to review this like a sports car. No one buying these things cares about how it carves up a back road. So just know, it's still confident and safe feeling handling that, just soaks up the bumps very nicely and stuff. But you certainly feel the weight, and especially here at the ultra luxury trim, it certainly feels, very soft and a little bit wallowy. But for this type of vehicle, that's totally appropriate. But the one final thing I will add is that, yes, this thing is supposed to be soft and pillowy and stuff, but, comparing this to like a Wagoneer, comparing it to the Escalade, the Navigator, I've driven all three, I would say all three of those have slightly sharper handling than this does. They just feel like, you can take corners at a little bit more speed in those without feeling like the vehicle's being overwhelmed. I mean, again, none of them are sports cars, but, they just seem like they handle a little bit sharper. I think the steering's a little quicker in most of those as well compared to this, where it feels a little bit slower and more relaxed as far as that goes too. And one big change they did make to the steering is that it is now an electrically assisted steering rack instead of hydraulically assisted like in the previous LXs. So I do feel like there is a little less connection here, but it still feels very good. And again, for a vehicle like this, you don't need road feel and all that. But just one other big change here for this. Now, for the handful of people that do actually care about how these things perform off the beaten path, you still have plenty of off-road capability. Obviously, the ultra luxury trim is not the one to get if you want that. You can get lower trims with 18-inch wheels and taller sidewall tires and stuff if you want a little bit of extra capability there, if you want to do some ultra luxurious overlanding in one of these things or something. But it has the multi-terrain select thing, so it'll raise up that suspension, give you a higher ride height, and custom tailor the drive modes to whatever kind of circumstances you're dealing with. And it also has a crawl mode and downhill control for descending hills and all that. So it has all that stuff. It also has a center locking diff. There's a live axle in the rear, but it does have a center locking diff here. So good you have that. And I'm not going to go too much into that because I strongly doubt that anyone's really going to be taking these things off the beaten path very much. I mean, it does have that credibility still is based on the Land Cruiser, the new Land Cruiser. To merge onto a highway on-ramp here, put my foot to the floor again. Now it's more responsive. Still in Sport Plus mode, by the way. And I mean, yeah, this thing, it moves very, very nicely. It's not quite as extreme of an experience as it is in the Sequoia. The Sequoia, I was like, holy cow, this thing is a as tested. These start around just under $28,000. This one, as tested, is about $36,500. And for about $37,700, so basically like $1,200 more, you can get that Sportage hybrid comparably equipped. And so so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low city visibility is amazing in the NSX. I mean, it is truly remarkable. And a lot of supercars are really good, but the NSX really stands out as being one of the best in my opinion. I mean, you have a massive windshield, the hood drops down so low that you can barely even see it. I mean, you feel like you're driving around almost in a bubble. And I remember the first generation NSX, I didn't do a full review on it, but I did briefly drive one, and I was blown away by the visibility in that as well. And this really echoes that. It might not be quite as good as the first gen, but it's not far off. Really impressive. I mean, nice thin A-pillars, and like I said, they come up so high that you have a much larger side window, I think, than you get with a lot of the competing supercars that really feel claustrophobic inside. This feels pretty airy, actually, and I'm really impressed. Again, I love looking at those side view mirrors as well. They're just so cool to look at. Other things, though, well, I'm just cruising here in the normal sport mode. Quiet is the lowest mode, but sport mode is kind of like the default, and we'll come in with the hybrid stuff whenever you need it to, but then we'll kick on the engine whenever you need it as well. And there's also a very small battery here in the NSX, since of course it is a hybrid, and that charges very quickly, and so it will come on and off as far as whether the engine is needed or whether there's enough battery power there to keep you going on electric mode only. And the electric motors have a decent amount of power to them. I think they're about like 76 horsepower, so not a lot, but enough to allow you to drive around at low speeds like we are now with the engine completely off. I'm gonna turn onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Whoa! Instant thrust! Woo! Man, all right. Very punchy, and in track mode, traction control is off, so you're going to want to be careful in that, but you have the all-wheel drive, so it's not quite as crazy as something as rear-wheel drive, but man, yeah. Instant thrust, very impressive. And then you get the wastegates flutter from those turbos, which is amazing too. Man, that engine really screams. Woo! So, very impressive. It really planted me in the back of my seat there. So the NSX here runs a 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 engine. It has 573 horsepower combined with the electric motors, 476 pound-feet of torque, and then on the gas engine alone, that does 500 horsepower on its own and about 406 pound-feet of torque on its own. So you have about 75 horsepower and pound-feet about that coming from those electric motors. And oh yeah, the upper RPMs were really, I think it's a lot more aggressive. In the lower RPMs, it wasn't quite as immediate there, but yeah, once you kick up, it does go pretty crazy. But we're gonna go ahead and put it into the manual mode here. Let's see how that does. Pretty impressive. I would say it's about CF 8-speed automatic fast. Maybe a tiny bit quicker, but again, I'm still in track mode. But yeah, feels pretty good. And I also have to compliment them on this dual clutch, because it is a 9-speed dual clutch automatic, but it actually doesn't really have much of an engagement point. So they were very good with their refinement here on the dual clutch. Even inching up a little bit earlier, I had no issues with it. But anyway, I love the way that V6 sounds. It's very cool. All right, but we're coming up some corners here, and let's see how the NSX handles this. Shouldn't have any problem. This thing is a monster around corners from what I've heard. And yep, wow, it's flat. Yeah, this thing, I mean, tons of grip. You feel that it's a little bit weightier than something like a McLaren 570S, for example. I reviewed one of those. That's almost 500 pounds lighter. It's got a carbon fiber tub and everything. Yeah, this thing is impressive, but yeah, so I mean, tons of grip. We have 245 wide tires in the front, 305s in the rear, and for 2019 they did a bunch of handling improvements. First off, they have Continental Contact Sport 6 tires, and they're 20-inch wheels in the back, 19s in the front here. But so that gives you plenty of grip. They also stiffened up a lot of the stuff in the suspension, the toe bushing, sway bars, stabilizer bars, all that kind of stuff is now sharper. Yeah, but this thing is just so easy to go so quickly in. I actually feel like I'm going slow, and then I look down and I'm like, oh, actually this thing's hauling. But it just masks the speed because it's just so effortless in the way that it just demolishes corners. It's really impressive. I think the max lateral G, they said, was like 1.08 G. So compared to the main competitors that Acura reviews for this vehicle are the Audi R8 V10, the 911 Turbo, and the McLaren 570S. Compared to all those, this has more lateral max G than what you can generate in those vehicles. And also, by the way, part of how it might be getting that is you can get an optional Pirelli Trofeo R tire on this to give you even more grip if you want. But I have no issues with these Continentals. But anyway, all those tuning changes for the suspension, they say, have given you better at-the-limit handling and control is what they're saying. And they say that it actually is about 2 seconds quicker around Suzuka's circuit for the 19s and up compared to the older NSXs. And so that's a very impressive improvement just, on some suspension tweaks and new tires, basically. So very impressive in that regard. But, oh, man. This thing is impressive, but honestly, it's a little less savage than I was expecting it to be. It still feels very good, but it's so accessible. This is a supercar you can drive every day and not be intimidated by. It doesn't feel really crazy or wild in any way. It's just very friendly, even with traction control off. I do wish, even in track mode though, I wish this transmission was a tiny bit quicker, because, you can see when I pulled the paddle and when it actually shifted. Same with downshifts. Less of a delay there, but oh man, yeah, I'm gonna have to try some more manual shifting though, because it seems a little more savage in manual mode on these upshifts. A little bit more of a bump in your back whenever you're shifting, but that's great. So yes, very impressive specs, by the way. If you were to do a launch control on this, 0 to 60 is 2.9 seconds. So under 3 seconds, that's right up there with all the best supercars out there these days. But let's go ahead and try a launch control here. So they say just put the foot on the brake, put your foot on the gas, and then release the brake. Ooh, there we go! Woo! Yes, sir! Alright, launch control is where it's at. I wasn't quite as blown away with the normal acceleration, but ooh, okay, yes, launch control actually made my stomach hurt with how impressive. Ooh, wow! Alright, so yes, you're going to want to do launch control to get the most of an impact out of the acceleration on the NSX. Wow, that was impressive. Alright, yes, that's where the 2.9 seconds here to 60 comes from. Whew. That's the craziness I was looking for. Alright, so...
Now let's take it to the music.
Man, it's impressive. Oh man, yeah. Okay, so I'm back in Sport Plus mode now. So we have traction control back on. And honestly, it feels really good still here in Sport Plus. It feels just as sharp. I don't think it's any less sharp than track mode, even though the little diagram shows that it is supposed to be a little less aggressive. But I love how quick the turn-in is too. It really wants to dive into corners. More corners here. Wow, yeah. And so, one of the awesome things with the NSX here is it has true torque vectoring. All the other competitors like to talk about some type of torque vectoring, but it's all electronics. This is an actual mechanical that explodes out of corners. It's a mechanical true torque vectoring system, and so it really means, again, you can rock it out of corners in this thing very impressively. And so you have the all-wheel drive, you have 2 electric motors in the front, 1 in the back, and so it just has, like I said, tons of grip, and really feels like you're driving something from the future, because this is what you're going to see in the future. Everyone, Ferrari's working on a twin-turbo hybrid V6 in their next supercar, and there's lots of others going in this direction. Corvette's rumored to have an electric motor in the front someday, and it really just is amazing for handling. Yes, I've driven the new mid-engine Corvette. It handles fine, but this is a whole nother level from that. The grip, the confidence, the tenacity of the NSX, it really is so much more impressive than stuff like the mid-engine Corvette, which isn't a fair comparison. That car is, like half the price of this. But it just, this is worth the extra money. You might not think so because it's not that much higher horsepower or something, or it doesn't sound as crazy as a V10 in an Audi R8 or Lamborghini Huracan or something. But this thing is just as fast, just as ferocious, and is truly amazing. And yes, it's a little heavier, like I said, than some of the lightest offerings. Like a 911 Turbo is going to be a little bit on the heavier side too. But this is, still not that bad. It's about just under 3,900 pounds. It's like 38.78 or something like that. So very reasonable, I think, considering you have all these electric motors, you have the hybrid powertrain with the battery, you have all that stuff. To still be under 4,000 pounds, I think is pretty impressive. I love the way this thing also just kind of like lifts up the front end. You feel like 3,500 RPMs just... It has a really... I love the induction mode out of that engine. I will say, at low RPMs, this engine doesn't sound super appealing. So we'll go ahead and put it into the normal drive mode. It doesn't sound sound as sweet as a V10 engine at 2,500 RPM sounds or something like that. But then, all you gotta do a couple downshifts. That sounds good. I love the turbo sound. I love when manufacturers play. Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low seating position, excellent visibility. That's what I think I noticed here. You have a pretty good and high seating position. Of course, the seat does go up and down, so you can make it higher or lower depending on your preference. But I mean, no matter where you sit in this thing, I mean, you have such good visibility. You have a nice large windshield. You have a nice thin A-pillar, a nice large window here right by your mirror, and the mirror is off onto the door. It's a great view out of the sides. View out of the back is also pretty good. Of course, if you do have those third row headrests up, they will kind of get in the way a little bit if you're actually using a third row. Otherwise, you can drop those. But otherwise, it's a very natural and very refined thing to drive. So, you know, I think the one thing that stands out to me, especially after my week with the new Toyota Sienna, which has a 4-cylinder now, and it's a hybrid, but it's a lot more buzzy with that little 4-cylinder working so hard. This V6 is smooth as butter by comparison. I mean, you hardly even hear it. I mean, yeah, we're only going 15 miles an hour right now, but even at 15 miles per hour in this Sienna, you could hear that engine. And this is just really smooth. It's also really great throttle response because you have a naturally aspirated. Is actually the one mechanical change here. There's a couple other little changes driving wise, but mechanically, let's turn down onto this back right here and see how it does. Here we go. Really takes off. You do a VTEC which rips in those upper RPMs there and really makes this thing feel pretty strong. It actually wants to spin the front tires there good, but I mean, it's kind of cold today. We have all season tires, but very strong and peppy feeling. So we're running a 3.5 liter V6 engine with VTEC. It has 280 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 is about 6.5 seconds here in the Odyssey, and it's a pretty strong runner, I have to say, especially again compared to the Sienna, which is over a second slower with its 0 to 60, you know, way less horsepower and stuff. This feels really refreshing to have that nice strong V6. Of course, you do get the V6 in the Pacifica and in the Kia Sedona as well, so it's not like this is the only one with the V6, but this is the only V6 with VTEC, and if you're an enthusiast, you know, having that little rip in the upper RPMs there is kind of fun, and it just feels really strong, and I just appreciate that about it. I mean, even when you're not in sport mode, you know, it has this 10-speed automatic transmission. It's always ready to go, and it doesn't shift a million times like you might think that a 10-speed automatic would be constantly shifting. It does it very well in the background, so you never are really conscious of all the shifting it's doing, and it doesn't really seem to have to do a whole lot of shifting anyway, because you just have a good amount of power there, you know, in basically any gear. But yeah, we even have paddle shifters here, which is something you don't get in the other minivans, and so we'll try those out here just for kicks. Downshift was pretty quick. You know, this actually the manual shifts here are pretty quick. It's actually better than even some sporty automatics from some other companies. I'm pretty impressed with how it does the manual shifting. Nice little bonus here I wasn't expecting in the Odyssey, but so pretty sporty. I mean, Honda, you know, they do a lot of enthusiast vehicles, and so they know how to set up something for fun, and so even if you are an enthusiast, you might enjoy the Odyssey. But we're cutting up some corners here, and let's see how the Odyssey handles them. So we have these 19-inch wheels here on the Elite, which I think certainly help to give it a little bit of a flatter feeling. And again, nice and natural steering here, which certainly helps it to feel pretty direct. But it feels pretty good. Honestly, it's fairly flat and feels pretty confidence-inspiring. Yeah, I wanted to spin the inside tire there again because it really wants to dork steer. It's kind of funny. But honestly, this handles pretty well. I would say this is mid-pack. I think the new Sienna XSE, even though it's heavier by a couple hundred pounds, that seemed to feel a little bit sharper with its handling. It also had 20-inch wheels, so it was even 1 inch larger than these. That might have been part of what helped. But I do think that this does feel flatter and a little bit more athletic than the Chrysler Pacifica. I've not driven the Kia Sedona to compare that with these. But so that's kind of where this lands. But I would say this is a close second to the Sienna, and it's closer to the Sienna's first place in the handling in my mind than it is to the Pacifica's third. It's kind of an upper second place in my opinion. It does handle itself really well, and I know that most minivan buyers probably don't care. You're not going to be flying around corners and stuff, but if you do happen to find yourself in a hurry, just note that this thing is going to be able to kind of keep up with you. I think the only thing that I'm feeling is the lack of grip. So obviously you're on all season normal touring tires, nothing sporty obviously, but I think that's the only thing, is whether I'm accelerating out of a corner, I'm accelerating from a stop quickly, or if I'm just kind of hustling around corners a little bit. I think the lack of grip is the one thing that I do feel, and that is a little more pronounced than that was in the Pacifica and in the Sienna. So I think that's the only thing. Maybe these tires could be a little bit grippier or something, but aside from that, I think this thing feels really great, and above all else, it's smooth. That's the thing, is this is just so buttery smooth and soft, and it does have a smoother ride than the Sienna XSE that I reviewed, at least. Much more smoothed out than that, and I'd say it's pretty much on par with the Pacifica without giving up any of the handling. That this has a little bit of a handling edge, I think, over that Pacifica. And we'll accelerate with the wheels turned here. See how that does. Yeah. I can feel the torque steer. Wow, it torque steers more than a hot hatch. It's funny. It really, I can feel the steering wheel jerking around a little bit. So that's one thing that you'll notice, is you definitely have a little bit of the wheel fighting you if you're in a hurry, because could use a little bit of a better grip. And of course, many of the competitors these days do offer all-wheel drive. Unfortunately, in the Odyssey, it's still front-wheel drive only. We'll see what they do with the next generation version in a few years. But for now, the Odyssey is only front-wheel drive, so that grip is going to be more, exaggerated in this, the lack of grip versus the all-wheel drive you can get in the competition, which will help you with, all-weather driving, and whether you're driving in snow and stuff. But how much this wants to spin the front tires in the dry, I would be a little skeptical of this in the winter. You might want to put some snow tires on it or something. But yeah, so that is one thing I do really wish they would offer all-wheel drive, because Honda has such a fantastic all-wheel drive system in all their other vehicles, like the Pilot and stuff, with true torque vectoring, and that is really a fantastic system, and I'd love to see that put in here to help, again, further address those traction issues. But yeah, otherwise though, it's very just nice to drive. Now this is a little bit of a rougher road too, and you don't really hear any road noise. I mean, it's a very low hum, but compared to even like the Sienna that had more road noise, I think the Pacifica is pretty equally quiet to this. You do have, I think, some quieter glass here in the Odyssey for 2021 as well, at least here in the lead trim, and so that certainly will help us feel a little bit more refined. But it does feel very luxurious, just with everything about the driving experience here, aside from the crazy wheel spin. Otherwise, it's just so smooth. It's just a great, relaxing cruiser. Alright, so now we're out on the highway here in the Odyssey. It's a really great highway cruiser as well. I will say, I think it's notably more quiet in this on the highway than the Sienna. And you can even compare my Sienna video of me driving that on the highway versus this. I think this is a good bit quieter. It's not going to be as quiet as a luxury car or anything, but I think they did do a nice job of keeping this really refined in here. A couple other things to talk about here while we're out on the highway is the safety technology here in the Odyssey. So like all the minivans here in this segment, they all have a high priority with safety, and so whether it's the blind spot monitoring or the automatic emergency braking, the adaptive cruise control systems, all those types of things are mostly standard here, and they are in the Honda, by the way. I mean, the adaptive cruise is standard, which, by the way, one of the new things from 2021 is the adaptive cruise control system now does stop and go driving, so we'll actually be able to inch up into that low speed stuff for you, as well as also giving you pedestrian detection as well for the automatic emergency braking system to help to give you, a little bit of an extra safety there whenever you're driving around the city and stuff with pedestrians about. And so, anyway, but out on the highway here, I have the adaptive cruise control system on right now, and Honda, they just always do such a good job with their adaptive cruise control system. Not only with the smoothness of the actual just normal adaptive cruise system, but also with their lane keep assist system, which I still maintain is one of the best systems on the market. I think Volvo is slightly better, but I think Honda's system, Honda and Acura, is really, one of those top systems, and I love this system. It gives me so much confidence because it almost never loses track of the road lines, and that's something that a lot of the other companies, whether it's Toyota's system, GM system, I mean, there's lots of other adaptive cruise control systems that really struggle to keep you in your lane and help with steering and stuff, whereas with the Odyssey here, it does a really good job of holding onto the lane. Now, every once in a while, it will get a little bit confused if the road markings are a little bit weird, or like right now we have a little bit of odd paving set up here. So this can kind of, throw it off a little bit, but it still does a really good job of keeping track of the road lines, and I'm always impressed with Honda's system. It always gives me so much confidence that it's going to hold the road line. You even notice that the first second that you turn on the lane keep assist system in the Honda versus the competition, you'll feel that the steering immediately gets tighter, and it does that because you can tell it's like once you hit that the lane keep assist system, it's like this is on rails. Like it's like, all right, we're like lasered in on these lanes, and it really does all these micro adjustments for you. And I love Honda's lane keep assist system. It is really one of the best out there. And so whenever you have confidence in a system like this, I just really enjoy having the V6 power in these minivans. It is really great. You have really good fuel economy in the CNN. It does demolish all the other vans as far as its fuel economy. But having a V6, so I've been driving this vehicle almost 200 miles now, and in my driving, I did do a good bit of idling this on the
government. Of course, I don't know, but Senator Tom Cruise today himself said that this is the case. So again, I don't know, but would it be the first?
So setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low seating position. You have a nice high seating position like you expect from a crossover SUV like this these days, and excellent visibility here. It's very similar to the RAV4, where you have a nice thin A-pillar, a nice little window here right by your mirror. The mirror is off on the doors, and so it just gives you an excellent view forward. I love the visibility here. And view out of the back is also really good, even with the regular standard mirror, but this one also has the digital camera rearview mirror here in this top trim, and so that gives you a very high definition view of everything around you, and so that's really nice to have. This also does have on the top trims here the bird's eye 360 view, so whenever you're in reverse, or if you manually put in the camera mode, then you'll be able to see a bird's eye view of everything around you, and it's very nice to have the forward camera as well whenever you're parking in tight spaces and things like that. And so overall, I really love all that. It makes it very easy to drive the Venza. But just cruising here on a little park road, but we're going to go ahead and put it up into the sport mode. It does have a sport mode here, and I'll put the transmission into its sport mode as well. And yeah, let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Nice little electric punch. It really takes off well off the line. Pretty quick. Yeah, so I'm pleasantly surprised. It feels punchier than the numbers suggest. So Toyota's a little odd with the way they quote their horsepower. So they give you a combined horsepower of 219 horsepower. I believe about 163 horsepower of that comes from the gas engine. The rest comes from the electric powertrain, but there is no torque figure given. The gas motor does, I think, about 163 pound-feet of torque, but the electric motors and stuff, theoretically, you could end up doing, like over 300 pound-feet of torque, but they don't all work together to give you their maxed outputs at the same time. So that's a little bit iffy. So as far as judging actual torque, I'm not sure, but the result is you get a 0 to 60 time of 7.6 seconds here in the Venza. That's what Car and Driver got. And, I guess when you're up at speed, it doesn't feel quite as punchy, but you still get that instant electric jolt, especially here in sport mode. That the 7.6 number feels a little slow to me. I would say this feels like it's maybe high sixes or something like that. Still not, sports car fast or anything, but it's, pretty punchy. It only weighs a few pounds over what you get in the RAV4 hybrid, so you're not really paying any kind of weight penalty or anything like that. And it does have a manual shift mode here, but it's mostly just for like the regenerative braking to really slow you down more. And it doesn't actually do any shifting. So it's just for regenerative braking, which is really cool though, because it means whenever you're going down hills and stuff, you can control how much it's doing the regen, and that's really awesome. Unfortunately, there aren't any paddle shifters to do that like you can get in the RAV4 hybrid, which would be nice to have. But I get that the Venza is not supposed to be sporty. That's why there is no XSE or SE versions of the Venza. It's just the XLE and then the Limiteds and stuff here. So they're deliberately choosing to make this the less sporty version. So if you want a sporty vehicle of this size, you just go for the RAV4 hybrid and you get that sporty version. And so, but anyway, we're coming off some corners here, and let's see how the Venza handles them. So, like I said, a little over 3,900 pounds. Okay, so it doesn't do too bad. So you have that little bit of a battery in the floor to give you a little bit of a lower center of gravity. And it also does have this active cornering assist, which kind of is like a brake-based torque vectoring thing. Will brake and use the stability control system to help you get around corners a little bit better. Actually, though, it's pretty flat. I was expecting a little bit more body roll, and there really wasn't any. But it's funny how in sport mode, it really is keeping this engine on boil. It does not want it to chill out at all. But I'm impressed with the handling, honestly. So I feel like the steering is definitely slower than a RAV4, and I think they said that is one thing they changed. But the first time I took this around a corner, I was like, yep, steering is not quite as eager as a RAV4. So RAV4 hybrid is still going to be the more agile and the more fun and athletic feeling vehicle of the two, but that doesn't mean that the Venza is going to feel lazy or too soft or anything. I mean, you have a little bit of a softer ride than the RAV4 too, which I'm appreciating, but it doesn't feel like it's holding me back a whole lot. Again, for something like this, compact, mid-size crossover, no one's going to be treating these things like sports cars, really. And so I think that, for going around corners in a spirited fashion like I'm doing now, it still feels pretty sporty. Again, I think a lot of the credit goes to that electric motor in the rear, which can really help to rotate that back end instantly and give you really great punch out of a corner. And so I really like it. Honestly, though, I think this actually feels a little more secure than the RAV4 hybrid, which is kind of something I wasn't expecting. So the RAV4 hybrid seemed like it was even a little bit too playful sometimes in the handling department, whereas this feels a little more buttoned down because everything's a little bit slower. It feels I don't know, I just have a little bit more confidence pushing this than I did the RAV4, which is kind of an interesting thing I wasn't expecting either. But overall, I'm pleasantly surprised with the handling of the Venza here. It really doesn't let me down. I'll do another acceleration with the wheels turned. Oh man, that was interesting. So I got some wheel spin from the front tires. I felt the steering wheel kind of jerking me a little bit, and a little bit of torque steer there from the gas engine because it was putting out more power than the electric motor in the back was putting out. So a little bit of a mismatch there. But so that's the thing with this all-wheel drive system is they say it can send up to 80% of the available power to the rear, but based on the fact that the only way the rear wheels are powered is through a 54 horsepower electric motor. It does do a decent amount of torque, so I guess that's what they're referring to, but it still doesn't seem like it could be 80%, but that's what they're saying it can do. And but I've just noticed that it's still just going to feel a little more front-wheel drive based for this all-wheel drive system. It's not a mechanical all-wheel drive system like, for example, the CR-V hybrid. That is an actual mechanical all-wheel drive system, even in the hybrid version, and so that will give you, a little bit more of a normal all-wheel drive system than that you're probably expecting. Whereas this is a little bit different, but it still feels really good. And yeah, so the only other little mechanical difference between this and the RAV4 that's worth mentioning for the RAV4 hybrid is that it actually has a smaller battery here in the Venza. So the Venza here runs a 0.9 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery versus the 1.6 kilowatt hour nickel hydride battery that you get in the RAV4 hybrid. So I think that they said that the nickel's a little bit better in colder temperatures, but they just still felt like the lithium ion battery was the right choice here for the Venza. I'm not sure, why they made that difference. Maybe it was a packaging thing, I'm not sure, but this does feel really good coming out of that corner, though. This is much sportier than you're probably even expecting or wanting out of a Venza, but I'm here to say that I'm pleasantly surprised. It does handle really well. We can go ahead and put it out of the sport mode, go back into the normal mode here, and try and do a little bit more normal driving here in the Venza. And this is where, it's still pretty refined. I mean, yes, you have, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine that you're going to hear, but it's really not bad. And also, it's really nice how the steering does get a little heavier in sport mode, so now that I'm in normal mode, it's a little bit lighter, but the steering still feels really nice in either mode. It doesn't have a ton of feel to it, but there is a little bit of feeling, and it just feels very natural, and again, like kind of what you're expecting and wanting out of, a crossover like this. And also, we're now on a little bit of a rougher road here, and still pretty nice and quiet, and it is much quieter than a RAV4. They do have a little bit more noise in the cabin, road noise especially, and so they did say that the windshield is an acoustic windshield here in the Venza, and so I think that gives you a little bit better sound insulation as well. In addition to the additional sound insulation they said they put in various places all over this interior, and they say on the floor it's like one piece, instead of, I guess in the RAV4 it's multiple pieces, and it's not quite as good. So anyway, this is going to feel a little more luxurious than the RAV4. Alright, so now we're out on the highway here in the Venza, and you can hear there's a little bit of road noise and wind noise, but I think it's definitely more refined than the RAV4 hybrid. I don't think it's Lexus refined still, but it is certainly better than a RAV4 hybrid. I also have the adaptive cruise control system on right now, and it has the active lane keep assist, and it also does do the lane tracing assist. So basically, it's keeping track of the road lines, and it is helping me do the steering here. Now, this system is a little bit more active than it is in some of the past Toyotas I've used, and so this is the next generation version of this software, I think, because it certainly is, more active with giving me steering assist. And it's doing a pretty good job. Now, it's still, like this road right now, there's a little bit of a spot near the center line here where it's paved in a darker fashion, and so I think that might be throwing this off a little bit, because it wants to hug a little close and kind of cut the apex a little bit more than most other systems, which keep you pretty centered in your lane. This is still going back and forth between the lanes a little bit more, but it certainly is better than past Toyota systems, and this is still pretty good. I still think that I prefer Honda and Nissan system a little bit better than this system currently, but it is helping me with the steering, and so I think, on long highway road trips and things like that, this is going to take a little bit of the fatigue out of your long drives by helping you with those micro corrections. You still have to be paying attention and doing the driving yourself, but it is nice to have it assist you with the steering a little bit. And this system is also much quicker to react, so whenever a car got out of my way and I put the turn signal on to do a pass, it was like, all right, let's speed up. And it was very quick to, figure that out. And a lot of other systems are a little more dim-witted and take a few seconds before it's like, okay, I can go faster now. This was right there and was like, all right, let's, get this pass done. And
all right, so now let's do a little sound test. I'm going to start off at 50% volume. Make sure you put your headphones on. Okay, now I have Mega Bass turned on and you could feel that bass. Now I'm going to start the song over again, this time maximum volume. Here we go. All right, so I just dimmed all of the lights. Now let's try a different song and see the full omnidirectional lighting. Now, of course, you do have one of my favorite features, karaoke. All right, so let's try out the mic.
Yeah, DJ Cringe back in the building. Let's get it going. I need all the ladies to the dance floor. DJ Cringe representing Southside Queens. Let's get it going. This is way too much fun. Let's go.
All right, now let's check the battery charging feature. So I just plugged in a USB Type-C cable. Let's grab a phone. And there it is. Charging right up. All right, so I just finished setting up the speaker downstairs in my office, and there's a few more things that I wanted to mention. Now, the speaker has a crazy amount of bass, but if you want even more bass, you can go to the Sony Music app, go to Custom EQ, and add more. Now, when I was testing this speaker out on the table, it sounded amazing, but when you put this speaker on the floor, the bass sounds incredible. All right, so here's another thing I wanted to mention. If you have multiple Sony speakers that are compatible and you want to pair them all together, go to the app, go to Party Connect, and check this out. Now I can pair up my XG500, my XP700, and the XV900 all at the same time. And trust me when I tell you, it sounds incredible. All right, so one last thing. Now I paired the speaker up to the TV. Check out how it sounds. Let's hit play. Alright, so I just took a ride on the golf cart. I'm at the main dining area. As y'all can see behind me, they got the drink set up. Happy hour 1 o'clock. Let's go. retarded. All right, so
I think that Mattel and Hot Wheels have been listening to all of my nonsense about conquering volcanoes with vehicles because they've designed a car that not only conquers volcanoes but is powered by lava. In the Thrill Racers 2011 series, it's the volcano car Rocket Fire, which is pretty new, so it's only conquered 8 volcanoes at this point, but you can see there's a lot of room on the side of the car for some more zeros. Because this thing is designed to conquer volcanoes. Look at the wheels! I want those wheels for my car. This thing also has a Batmobile-crushing rocket engine on the back, which I also want installed on my car. In fact, I just want this car in real life. Will somebody make it? I love the bright orange wheels on this thing. It just jumps off the shelf and grabs your attention, and then throws you in a volcano. And that's not a standard gasoline-powered V8 in there. That's a lava-powered engine if I've ever seen one. And I think they're onto something here. This is a green car. With the price of gas escalating and batteries being completely useless, I think we need to power vehicles with lava. There's an abundance of lava. Is simply wonderful. And when you look at it from this angle, it appears to be a skull with machine guns. Come on, it's great. It's the Rocket Fire from Hot Wheels, a car that needs to be made in real life.
Recognize the admission of Finland and Sweden to NATO, because we all know that, looking from an historical perspective, NATO members have brought their national issues to the...
Well, in the case of the 2005 Porsche Carrera GT, just about everything you can see, touch, and experience has the supercar superlative written all over it. Rather than base its ultimate street car on the 911 platform, Porsche engineers produced a machine that's as trick and technical as a Le Mans endurance racer. The heart of the Carrera GT is a super stiff monocoque chassis made of carbon fiber reinforced composites. Bolted to the rear of the cockpit structure is a carbon fiber subframe that supports the engine and transmission. Total chassis weight a feather-light 220 pounds. It's so stiff that designers were able to include removable carbon roof panels without compromising chassis integrity. This race car chassis is supported by a pure race car suspension. The Carrera GT uses push rods and double track control arms, just like the Le Mans winning Porsche GT1. All suspension components ride on 5-spoke magnesium wheels, 19 inches up front, 20 inches in the rear, that wear special dual compound Michelin Pilot Sport tires. Driving it all is a mid-mounted 5.7-liter V10 engine. It cranks out 605 horsepower and 435 pound-feet of torque. Developed from Porsche's 5.5-liter race engine, this 68-degree dry sump design utilizes titanium connecting rods and light alloy crank and cams, as well as an ultra-compact multi-plate ceramic composite clutch, and a super smooth 6-speed manual gearbox that's transverse mounted for optimum weight distribution. Wrapped around these mechanical wonders are aggressive carbon fiber body panels. The look is distinctively Porsche, from the 911 drawn nose with its xenon headlights, past the tight athletic flanks with their huge air intakes, to the wide muscular tail with a wing that rises at 75 miles per hour and a diffuser to help manage under-car airflow. Airflow to the standard ceramic composite brakes is also carefully managed. The massive discs are almost 15 inches in diameter and are squeezed by 6-piston monoblock aluminum calipers. ABS is naturally standard, as are traction control and a 4-channel stability system, which is good because the Carrera GT has enough power to easily unhook the rear tires if you're not smooth on the go pedal. Hit it hard and the ferocious power delivery punches you back into the seat. A 911 Turbo is the only other Porsche that comes close to the reaction of the Carrera GT, and even that monster is left in the dust by the GT's wicked acceleration. The Porsche GT is capable of 0 to 60 dashes of only 3.9 seconds and has clocked a top speed of 208 miles per hour. That's just a wink slower than the Enzo Ferrari we tested last winter. But a true supercar has to be just as quick when the road turns. And with its superb balance and the excellent feedback from both the suspension and the incredibly responsive steering, the Carrera GT positively dances through the corners. While those big ceramic brakes bite down hard, allowing you to dive deeper into the corners with total confidence than you ever thought possible. In supercar fashion, it is an easy car to drive insanely fast. On more sedate pavement, the Carrera GT feels quite civilized. The ride is very firm, only getting harsh over really choppy surfaces. The engine is extremely flexible, its wide power band allowing for easy cruising even at low RPM. But the sensitive clutch requires just the right balance for a smooth start, making the Carrera GT ill-suited for crawling through stop-and-go traffic. If you do have to sit in traffic, however, the Carrera GT cockpit with its carbon fiber, magnesium, and leather trim is a stylish and well-equipped space that's both cutting-edge and traditional. The overlapping analog gauges will look familiar to any Porsche fan, while the striking magnesium trim center console houses a Bose audio system and Text and Talk navigation system, and clear, simple climate controls for the air conditioning system with pollen filter. The driver and passenger sit in comfortable Aramid carbon seat shells covered in thinly padded leather. Adjustments are manual to save weight, while the view over the hood is breathtaking. And you're protected by front and side impact airbags. Personal gear is carried in a specially designed 5-piece set of luggage that fits in every available nook and cranny. Of course, if you want one of the only 1,500 Carrera GTs that Porsche will build, bring a suitcase full of cash. Base price is a mind-boggling $442,900. If you want faster air freight delivery, that's another $15,000. A sky-high price for one of the rarest and most sophisticated cars in the world. No matter how wonderful past Porsche efforts, the 2005 Porsche Carrera GT still surprises with its overwhelming capabilities. Yet it is also a design that never forgets that mere mortals are behind the wheel. It is indeed a supercar in every sense of the word.
First time? No, it would not be the first time. Let me remind you that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wrote in his book, which he released just a few
platform of the alliance whenever any particular topic came to the agenda.
Let's to thank one of our sponsors, Farmers Insurance.
I've seen this movie before.
You have?
Sure. This is the part where all is lost and the hero searches for hope. Then a mysterious figure reminds her that she has the Farmer's Home Policy Perk guaranteed replacement cost, and that her home will be rebuilt regardless of her limits or if the cost of materials has gone up.
That's really something.
Get a whole lot of something with Farmer's Policy Perks. Wait, I didn't ruin the ending, did I?
Yeah, you did.
We are farmers, bum 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 bum.